Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
My biggest project last year was the Classic Fallout Iceberg series, where I covered facts and lore about the Interplay titles, as well as the West Coast Fallout games. But as it turns out, there's another iceberg to go over. While it does have some entries overlap with the previous iceberg, there's some new ones to go over, and a whole bunch of custom ones I'm gonna include at the end to finish off this series. Will it stay down though? Who knows? This is the other Classic Fallout Iceberg explained. The Chosen One is the main playable character in Fallout 2, and they're officially the grandchild of the main playable character in Fallout 1, the Vault Dweller. After the ending of Fallout 1, where the Vault Dweller was exiled into the Wasteland, they founded the village of Arroyo. Eventually, they had a child who went on to become the village elder. That elder is the Chosen One's mother, making the Chosen One the grandchild of the legendary Vault Dweller. It's pretty cool stuff, assuming you live up to their legacy and don't immediately die in the Templar trials. Child Killer is a reputation title in the first 2 Fallout games you get for killing kids. Its description flat out calls you an evil person, and this is the icon for the reputation, presenting you almost as a Saturday morning cartoon villain who people rightfully hate. But originally, during Fallout 2's development, a new icon was made for the reputation by artist Brian Menzies, which is something to behold. Even Brian said he couldn't believe he drew this. The devs didn't end up using it and just used the original Fallout 1 icon, but the one they scrapped was pretty funny in a sick way, and you'll even see it pop up time to time in the fandom. John Cassidy is a companion in Fallout 2, whose daughter Rosa Sharon Cassidy, also known as Cass, is a companion in Fallout New Vegas. John was a bartender and owner in Vault City, who was running into issues with the local authorities. You can convince him to split from town and join you, where he'll prove pretty handy with a shotgun. Evidently, in the years after Fallout 2, he settled down with a tribal woman and raised Cass for a little bit. Unfortunately, Cassidy ended up leaving and never returning home, with the implication being he likely died out in the wasteland. When Cass's mother died of an illness, the girl was left to fend for herself, which she did by starting up her own caravan company. One last note I have about the two is both share a heart condition, which makes it so you can't give John any heart chems like Psycho or Buffout if you want to keep him alive. Meanwhile, Rosa Sharon won't die consuming them, but she will criticize any player who takes chems while she's around. It's just a little nice touch to show the character's connection and an example of like father, like daughter by the devs. Quick note here. There's gonna be some dumb censorship in this entry just to avoid the YouTube algorithm killing me. It's dumb, I know. You can become a star in New Reno for the Golden Globes Film Studio. In all things considered, it's surprisingly in-depth, no pun intended. To even have a shot for auditioning, you need either 9 charisma or the reputation, made man, or prize fighter. Then, to actually pass the audition, you'll need 8 endurance and agility, as well as a high performance rating. This is no joke, there is an actual calculation for it. Then, you get to be a star, getting to choose your own name and also getting some interesting reactions. But if you don't have the stats to become a star, well, there's always the alternative. The Vault-Tec experiments were secret tests performed on the underground shelters known as vaults in the Fallout franchise. As revealed by Enclave President Dick Richardson in Fallout 2, each vault wasn't a true safety shelter. They were intended as social experiments designed to test humanity in some way. This becomes a lot more clear in follow-up titles, which lean more on the experiment angle and present a lot of zanier vaults than the ones seen in the classic games. Well, mine is Vault Zero, but we'll get to that one later. Some fans disliked the Vault-Tec experiment twist presented in Fallout 2, since it seemed the vaults were just intended as normal shelters in Fallout 1. Personally, I like the experiment twist. Plus, it's brought about some great horror stories like Vault 11 that we probably wouldn't get if the vaults weren't experiments. So I am happy with them. I just wouldn't want to live in any of them. And don't even get me started on what the experiments are meant to test humanity for. It could be meant to test technology for a generation spaceship. It could be for creating a perfect society to reclaim the wasteland. Heck, I have a whole series on what each vault may have been made for. Nobark is the local schizoid of Novak, a paranoid wastelander frightened by chupacabras and communists, and rightfully so. Honestly, Nobark isn't bad company or wrong about everything, but he has undoubtedly gone a bit mad, no doubt due to the rat scorpion stings to the skull he's taken, which he mentions. Multiple stings to the skull.
Multiple.
Poor dude's probably got, like, super duper CTE. Which leads us to this fan theory, that Nobark is actually the Chosen One from Fallout 2, who got severe head trauma and forgot his heroic past, who's traveling in the iconic Highwayman before crashing and getting stung a bunch. Guess what appears near Novak? A crashed Highwayman like the one the Chosen One drove, complete with microfusion and energy cells in the trunk. What song plays when you see the Highwayman? Gold Slouch from Fallout 2. Nobark doesn't state his age, but he looks like he's getting up there. The Chosen One was born on March 23rd, 2221, according to the Fallout Bible. New Vegas starts during 2281, some 60 years later. So it could be that the Chosen One is around Nobark's age. It would work. Some have wondered why the Chosen One would leave the likes of Arroyo, which they helped to lead to prosperity, but maybe it's in the Vault Dweller genes to be a wanderer. The Vault Dweller originally settled Arroyo and made the village, before inevitably leaving it, for reasons unknown. The Chosen One's own father is even more of an unknown. Apparently he was stricken from the records because the Elder may have been embarrassed. But who knows, maybe he left the place too in search of adventure. Maybe the Chosen One followed in their footsteps. It's a fun little fan theory, if a little messed up and sad. I mean, just picture the Chosen One with CTE now living it up as a conspiracy theorist talking about commie ghosts. How the mighty have fallen.
Ghosts. Commie ghosts who don't know they're dead.
Joshua Graham in Van Buren, or the cancelled Fallout 3 from Interplay, is not the Joshua Graham from Fallout New Vegas. The Joshua we eventually got was a complicated character on the path to redemption. The Joshua we could have gotten in Van Buren was maybe capable of it later in game. Simply put, Joshua Graham in Van Buren is an evil companion who will antagonize characters you meet and act as an interpreter for tribals, purposefully misinterpreting them to try to start conflict. Moreover, instead of the Burned Man, he's called the Hanged Man, found hanging but still alive at Fort Abandon, an NCR military base destroyed by Caesar's forces. You could leave him to hang, or cut him down and recruit him as a companion, which would honestly be tempting since he's so good stat-wise. However, it'd be balanced out with how evil and manipulative he is, as well as the fact that he's jinxed, much like the pariah dog. We'll talk about that thing soon enough. Ultimately, depending on your charisma, you could talk to Joshua and try to redeem him. It'd be hard, but it would be possible. Alternatively, you could leave him damned, but that would also make him a tougher companion to have. We ended up getting a much nicer Joshua in the New Vegas expansion, Honest Hearts, who I really dig a lot along with much of the fandom. But it is cool to look back and see the Joshua we could have gotten. Caesar also existed in Van Buren, and similar to Joshua, this was not the Caesar we would eventually get in New Vegas, although there definitely are similarities. See, in Van Buren, the Caesar controlling the Legion wouldn't even be the original Caesar, but a replacement. The first Caesar was a follower of the Apocalypse Gone Bad, who came to power after helping a number of tribes end the reign of the Twisted Hares tribe. He grew powerful enough to threaten the NCR, lost the first battle of Hoover Dam, and in anger tossed his right-hand man Joshua into the Grand Canyon. But then sometime later, the first Caesar was killed. Unlike what we hear in New Vegas, in Van Buren, the Legion believes that the right of succession is assassination, with the inventiveness of the kill determining the respect given to the new Caesar. The old Caesar is even completely forgotten, deleted from history. That would explain why we don't get to know about the first Caesar or what his name was. And even in the design documents, not a lot is said about the new Caesar either. We don't learn his name or his intentions, but we do know the Legion is trying to establish a presence in the Southwest on top of securing slaves for themselves, trading humans and super mutants with anyone they can. They'll even trade humans to the ghoul supremacist settlement, the Reservation. Unfortunately, there's not a lot more I can say since it seems Caesar and the Legion were intended to be a faction explored more in future games if Interplay's Fallout 3 had come out. Despite having little content in New Vegas, there's a lot more Caesar's Legion in that game, but even still, it's pretty cool to see the differences between the two. Preset characters were a feature in the classic games, where besides the choice to make your own character from scratch, you could choose a pre-made character to play as. Heck, you can even go in and modify their stats if you want to. The presets are a feature which haven't been utilized in the newer games, which I'm kind of surprised at because it seems like a beginner-friendly option to have. Fallout 1 and 2 had 3 preset characters each. For Fallout 1, you had Vault 13 residents, including the high-strength Max Stone, dropped on his head as a baby, the high-agility Natalia Drubrovsky, who was the granddaughter of a Russian diplomat and a thief in the vault, and the high-charisma Albert Cole, who was a negotiator and local leader seeking life outside the vault. Fallout 2 had Arroyo tribals, such as the high-strength and agility Narg, one of the best hunters in the tribe, the high-charisma and intelligence Chitsa, who's the tribe's best trader, and the high-agility and perception thief turned scout Mingen. For Fallout Tactics, there were 5 characters, all members of the Brotherhood of Steel. Mick is a high-strength and agility volunteer, Snake is a high-agility sneak character banished from his tribe for robbery, Peter is a high-intelligence medic who lost his village to raiders, Betty is a high-charisma markswoman good with traps, and Wilma is a high-strength martial artist good with killing things in general. And then there's Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. Not counting the unlockable characters, which are just existing characters featured in the game, you get the choice of Nadia, an orphan girl who decided to follow the Brotherhood for a better life, Cyrus, a farmer who lost his community to mutant attacks and found the Brotherhood, and then Kane, a mercenary who lost his home of Necropolis to the super mutants and wishes to join the Brotherhood to get revenge. Again, the preset characters are a feature I'm surprised haven't made a return in the new games. It's not a huge loss, but it's just a little weird since I do think they help get you immersed a little bit, seeing characters who belong to this world and what they would be like, so you have something to compare your own characters to. I do think they help get you into the game. Well, minus some of these stat allocations. Vault Boy and Pip-Boy are different characters and different mascots. It's a little complicated, and it's not helped by the fact we see Vault Boy and then see him in the Pip-Boy wearable computer. So naturally, a lot of people will just use Vault Boy and Pip-Boy interchangeably to describe this weird fella. But the two names are ultimately for 2 different characters. Vault Boy was the mascot for Vault-Tec, whereas Pip-Boy was the mascot of Robco. Robco created the Pip-Boy wearable computer and made a deal with Vault-Tec to make the device's standard equipment for Vault Dwellers. You won't see the Pip-Boy mascot in the newer Pip-Boy 3000 computers shown in later games, but in the classic ones, he does appear on the older Pip-Boy 2000 model. Again, it's a little complicated, but I hope that clarifies things. They are different characters. The Master created the Psychers in Fallout 1, a small number of people with psychic powers. There's 4 Psychers we get to meet in the first game. Wiggum with electrokinesis, Lucy with telekinesis and minor photokinetic power, Moore with pyrokinesis, and Gideon with telepathy and minor photokinesis. They were experiments of the Master who used FEV to give them their powers, and according to the Fallout Bible, they were wiped from the genre when the cathedral exploded. But here's the thing. There's more Psychers seen in the series, such as the Forecaster in New Vegas who can see into the future. There's also Mama Murphy in Fallout 4 on the opposite coastline, who is also a clairvoyant. So what gives? How are there more Psychers if they're supposed to be wiped out? Well, putting aside the fact it might just be a retcon, my interpretation is the Master found a way to directly create Psychers using FEV. While the other Psychers we see might either be naturally supernatural or freak mutations. Everyone else in the series could be a natural or unnatural product of the environment. Also, yes, they are a Warhammer reference. I do want to throw that out there. The Fallout 1 Super Mutant ending is a bad ending you can get by siding with Unity and giving up Vault 13's location, which you can trigger by talking to either the Lieutenant or the Master. Originally, it was supposed to trigger 500 in-game days into a playthrough, as the super mutants invaded the wasteland and scoured it for your home. But this time limit got cut out. There's another bit to the Super Mutant ending, however. A tradition of the classic games was the ending slides, which presented the fates of various characters or places you'd come across in your playthrough. For Fallout 1, there was a voiceover recorded that seems to be for a Super Mutant ending slide, but you won't ever get to see it in-game. It's just in the data files. This is that voiceover.
It is done. Vault 13 belongs to the Unity and the Master. Your knowledge of the Vault defenses saved many mutant lives during the attack. You personally made the final kill when you took the life of the Overseer. You will certainly become one of the finest soldiers for the Unity, and your skills will see you rewarded often in the future. You are happy. But there remains the tiniest doubt of what could have been.
Velvet Elvis, or the Fuzzy Painting as it's called in-game, is an item appearing in Fallout 1 and 2. It's a small portrait of the legendary king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. Velvet Elvis is a reference to the very real Velvet Elvis, or Velvis, which are popular velvet paintings and portraits of Elvis in real life. There's only one Velvet Elvis in Fallout 1, seen during the UFO special encounter, as a silly Easter egg and reference to the conspiracy that Elvis was taken by aliens. Then in Fallout 2, there's a few more. It hasn't made an appearance since, even in New Vegas with the Kings, but funnily enough, it does get mentioned in Fallout 76 of all games.
I saw a light fall from the sky. I hoped for him, but instead found metal, smoke, and debris. Nothing else except for a fuzzy painting of a man in a blue shirt.
Working online multiplayer isn't something present in any of the classic games besides Fallout Tactics, which isn't officially supported anymore. Plus, it wasn't your typical Fallout experience, but with other players, like a co-op experience. It was your average competitive multiplayer, with the likes of Capture the Flag and its own version of Deathmatch mode. Technically, Interplay was working on an MMO project, Fall Online, which became Project V13, which became dead. Fallout 76 is as far as you'll get to a current working online multiplayer Fallout experience. That is, if you don't count unofficial free-to-play fan projects like F-Online Reloaded, F-Online 2238, and more in development. Frankly, I haven't played any of the fan-made Fallout MMOs, nor am I a big MMO fan in general, but it is impressive seeing fans deliver these kinds of projects. Making and maintaining an MMO is no easy feat. A lot of them end up getting shut down. So hats off to these devs for their work over the years. Pariah Dog is a companion in Fallout 2 who is probably the worst companion in the entire series. He's a dog you find in a special encounter who's surrounded by corpses of plague victims, and then he'll just suddenly join you. Doesn't matter if you're at the maximum party limit, he'll join anyway, dropping your luck to 1 and jinxing you. This can already make combat annoying if you miss your attacks, but then the dog won't even help you out during a fight, he'll just run away most of the time. The only escape is killing this thing, which will be incredibly annoying because for whatever reason, he's got 750 health points. Even the in-game descriptions don't do the dog a service, he's just plain bad. Pray that in your travels, you never run into the Pariah Dog. The Cafe of Broken Dreams is a special encounter in Fallout 2, featuring some characters and companions from Fallout 1, including those who didn't make the cut, like a playable black character or red-haired girl. It's a place of melancholy and fourth wall breaks, and it's one of the more memorable encounters in the game. You can even recruit dog meat here if you've got the leather jacket on.
God, Richard Gray.
The Master's real name is Richard Gray if you go off of what Harold tells you in Fallout 1. He tells the tragedy of Richard, being his companion who braved Mariposa, declared of mutants, and then was claimed by the Vats. What Harold doesn't know is Gray lived on to become the dark god of the children of the Cathedral cult, the Master. But what Harold also doesn't know is Richard's birth name, Richard Moreau. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, but the name gets mentioned in Fallout 2. Richard was a Vault 8 resident who was exiled for murder shortly after the residents left their vault to found Vault City. And as revealed in the Fallout Bible, these Richards are the same dude. So what went down exactly? What happened that caused Richard to commit murder, get himself kicked out of his community, and then change his last name? It's a mystery. Hardly any details are given, to the point that we don't even know who died. However, an interesting note left in the Bible is that given Vault City's hypocrisy, quote, the entire incident is questionable. If I had to wager a guess, I'd say Richard was likely a decent dude who either botched a surgery or killed someone who was a threat to the community. Heck, maybe both? Either way, Richard was exiled from Vault City, and was either smart enough or hurt enough to change his last name from his real one. In time, he lost both, becoming the Master.
So what shall it be? Do you join the Unity, or do you die here?
Join.
Die!
Join.
Die!
Boone is a companion in Fallout New Vegas, and he doesn't actually show up in Fallout Tactics. His voice actor does, Jason Marsden, voicing some side characters like a raider leader named Horace. Nevertheless, the clear similarity in the voices has spawned a YouTube video named Boone in Fallout Tactics.
I bet my boss will give me all the promotion and props I need after I bring him some Brotherhood slaves. Let's see what you trained monkeys can show little old Horace. I need someone I can trust. You're a stranger. That's a start.
The Fallout 2 Highwayman appears in New Vegas. The iconic car that could be repaired and driven around by the Chosen One in Fallout 2 is referenced in New Vegas in a location called Wrecked Highwayman, where the car is sinking into radioactive waste. The trunk is accessible, and inside we find a number of items including microfusion and energy cells, as a callback to how the car was also typically used as a way of hoarding items. Sadly, this Highwayman doesn't work like the one in Fallout 2 does. Located in Colorado in the Cheyenne Military Complex, Vault Zero was the central vault developed by Vault-Tec with technology to assess the data of every other vault. The plan was for Vault Zero to house some of the smartest minds in America, who would be placed in cryostasis and emerge to lead reconstruction efforts after the surface radiation went down. A robotic army would be used to exterminate any mutants on the surface and aid the Vault survivors as they properly rebuilt society. There was even a computer powered by human brains called the Calculator that was made to guarantee human preservation and the carrying out of this master plan for mankind's survival. However, as to be expected from Fallout, it all went to hell. The Calculator was severely underfunded, with higher-ups lining their own pockets or investing in luxuries like Vault Zero's underground hunting grounds. Inevitably, systems went haywire. People had their brains fried in the cryopods, and most of the population died. The survivors who didn't have brain damage couldn't fix any of the technical issues and perished, leaving only the stupid survivors left in an increasingly worsening Calculator, bent on exterminating life on the surface. The Calculator served as Fallout Tactics' main villain, and Vault Zero was its lair. Its canon status in the series is unknown, since Fallout Tactics is only partially canon, and the Vault was never mentioned in any of the future games. That said, Vault Zero did make a somewhat recent appearance in the Magic the Gathering Universes Beyond series, when Fallout got its own card deck in 2024. Also, with the Fallout show heading towards Colorado, maybe it will make a comeback. Intelligent Deathclaws were experiments seen in Fallout 2, the result of the Enclave messing around with FEV and producing talking Deathclaws. In vanilla Fallout 2 though, they get decimated. There's only 2 male survivors, Gorse and Zarn, who you can keep alive, but there doesn't seem to be much hope for these guys. There's only 2 males in the Intelligent Deathclaw species left, no females, and Chris Avallone did state in the Fallout Bible that the species went kaput. Seems pretty cut and dry these guys don't have a chance, right? Well, here's the thing. While we haven't heard of any Intelligent Deathclaws in any of the main games yet other than spin-offs like Fallout Shelter, one of their main designers, John Daly, did say there's a chance they could survive. Because their intelligence gene was male-orientated and dominant due to the Enclave experiments, it would be possible for Gorse and Zarn to sleep with your average Deathclaw and produce offspring that have some of those high IQ genes in them. he even said it in the Bible, but then Avalon also kind of overruled that by later stating, no, the Deathclaws are definitively dead. But then John still to this day says there's a chance they could survive. Make of it what you will. While it's 99% likely non-canon, there is an ending in the game files where the intelligent Deathclaws do survive instead of getting the Jason special. It's just not possible to achieve without mods. Basically, you were originally supposed to be able to save the Deathclaws in the vanilla game by fixing Vault 13's computer and killing Dr. Schreber in Navarro, who wants them all dead. However, the means of saving the Deathclaws was bugged in the final release, and you'll either have to install a mod to see the good ending, or just watch it here online.
With your aid, the Deathclaws of Vault 13 became a thriving community. When the Vault could no longer hold their numbers, a peaceful campaign of expansion was launched to claim the surrounding lands.
Finally, there were smart talking Deathclaws featured in another Fallout game, but we'll get to them later on during their own entry. Pat was the partner of the Vault Dweller, mentioned in the Vault Dweller's memoirs featured in the Fallout 2 manual. Once a citizen of Vault 13, Pat left their home along with a small group of others to find and join the exiled Vault Dweller. Fortunately, they were all successful and survived long enough with their hero to become a tribe. Heck, the Vault Dweller even fell in love with Pat and led the tribe together with them, forming a family who would become the future leaders of Arroyo. Pat's gender is left intentionally ambiguous, to make room for the player choice of the Vault Dweller being a dude or a girl. But regardless of player decisions, it seems the Vault Dweller truly loved Pat, building Arroyo and a family together with them until Pat's death. And evidently, they're still hurt by the loss. Quote, "My love perished years ago, and not a day goes by that I do not think of Pat's face. I see it every time I look at our children." Fallout is a cosmic horror game, and it's not just because of the aliens. While it's definitely a stretch to consider the first game this, which lacks the direct Lovecraftian cosmic horror references of the Bethesda titles, cosmic horror itself is a genre that relies on existential horror. It doesn't need Cthulhu or colors out of space to work. It just needs to tackle the insignificance of our lives in the face of an indifferent universe, the dread of existing and facing the unknown. And that can definitely be found in the series if you really put yourselves in the shoes of the main characters from each game. In Fallout 1, you're a Vault Dweller. You were born inside a shelter underground and must leave the safety of the only place you've ever known because it's in danger. The water chip is on the fritz, needing a replacement. No water chip means no pure drinking water, means no vault. Plus, you drew the short straw, so there's no choice on your part. You have to go out and face a world that you've never known, that your ancestor fled from when they purchased their safety in the vault. The Vault Overseer does give you a pretty decent pep talk, all things considered, but the next thing you know, you're at the vault door. The first thing you face beyond the darkness and shattering of creatures is Ed. Ed is dead. The guy was sent out before you, and he died. Why wasn't that mentioned? Everything about the Overseer counting on you and believing you to be the only hope of the vault is now hollow. Every comfort you could have had in being the chosen hero is a lie. Granted, Fallout is a game with an angle that makes us peer down on ourselves, so it may be a bit harder to get really spooked, but you'd probably be pretty scared if this was you. Then you're sent out into a wasteland unlike anything you've ever known, filled with dust, grime, raiders, mutants, drugs, and misery. Even places that are legitimately safe still feel strange and alien, never truly normal or calming. Take for instance Shady Sands, which is a genuinely innocent little village, but also bizarre. Just listen to its music here. It's like we are the stranger in a strange land, always out of place in a world outside our hole in the ground. But say we return back home to Vault 13, it's not really fully home either. We don't get any of those glorious safe room music vibes here. We get this. The sounds of machinery, typing, and unknown voices taint the soundscape. Everything is emphasized, as if now we're truly aware of this place and its limits, how it's being kept alive. The soundtrack labels it Vault of the Future, which is certainly how the Vault Dweller optimistically views it. But now on some level, that's been taken, stripped away by the darkness and largeness of the world outside. Now it also sounds scary and alienating. You do save Vault 13 getting the water chip, which you had to take from another community at Necropolis. It's true that you can help them out and spare them from dying of dehydration, but a lot of players will pick the easy route by stealing it, dooming Necropolis to die. The people who lived there were mutants who looked like zombies, in a place called Necropolis, City of the Dead. But they were human, and more than that, they were Vault Dwellers like you. The water chip is located in their vault, Vault 12, whose people are facing water issues of their own with their water pump and need the chip to survive. They're aggressive, yes, but they're also highly isolationist, just like your home Vault 13 is. Heck, with the vault numbering, you're basically neighbors. Simply put, you're facing a moral conundrum that may raise a lot of heavy questions for you to ponder. Perhaps the question will hit you, is this what it takes to survive in this world? Stealing resources from others like the ancestors did in the wars that led to the end? Are you doomed to repeat the same mistakes, if only to secure the safety of your home? You do so, but sadly, you're sent out once more after getting the chip, and deal with whatever's producing the amount of mutants there are in the wasteland. You face the Master, a threat to humanity itself, who, if not stopped, will seize the West Coast, if not the entire world. But despite his evil, the Master is leading the charge for unity, to prevent war and violence that killed the world and is still destroying it years after the bombs. If you stop him, you snuff out a genuine shot at true unification, which, as twisted as it is perhaps one of the last hopes for humankind to find peace there may ever be. By some miracle, you succeed. You stop the Master and the mutant threat, returning to your beloved vault, only to be betrayed. You're exiled. The Vault Overseer believes you would now serve as a bad influence for your fellow Vault Dwellers. If you ever returned, you would kill the Vault, inspire people to leave and sacrifice their safety.
I've made a lot of tough decisions since I took this position, but none of them harder than this one. You saved us, but you'll kill us. I'm sorry. You're a hero, and you have to leave.
So, you're forced out for the final time, facing a world you never truly belonged in. It's tragic on one hand, but maybe the slightest bit scary too. That you as a character will always face the unknown from this point forward, without the possibility of the cold comfort of the vault. Seeing our characters sulk out into the desert, it's pretty heavy stuff. We can sort of keep the existential dread going into Fallout 2, where you're a tribal exploring a world you probably know even less of. At least the Vault Dweller had computers and access to old photos or lessons, presumably. You just have stories to go off of, and outside your tribe of Arroyo, you're like a fish out of water. The wasteland is more advanced than you or your people. Settlements insult and look down on you for being behind, and the world, well, maybe more civilized now, is almost darker, more vile and vice-driven, compared to the sort of simple innocence of your home. Even Shady Sands, which is now the NCR, is becoming a conspiring power, hungry for settlements like Vault City. Read between the lines and silly pop culture references, and it's pretty bleak. Similar to Fallout 1, you're eventually faced against another threat to mankind, the Enclave. However, this group wants to annihilate all life on the Earth that isn't them. Again, by some miracle, you defeat them. But it's sort of scary to think that in the grand scheme of things, you got lucky. If you'd been born anywhere else, who would have known about the conspiracy against mankind besides the Brotherhood? Would anyone have been able to save the world like you did? You can definitely tell some stuff needs to be stretched or really analyzed to see a glimmer of that existential horror. But it is there, and that does settle for cosmic horror. The existential dread of life in the wasteland, or in the shoes of these main characters, can be felt in the sounds and sights you go through. Questions get raised about where humanity is headed, and if it's a good direction. Are we growing, or just worsening after destruction? The last thing I'll bring up is how a main theme that can be read into Fallout, in series creator Tim Kane's own words, is that it's, quote, a comment that war is inevitable given basic human nature. In the series, we're doomed as a species to keep killing and destroying ourselves, likely for all eternity. It's not Warhammer levels of bleak just yet, but it's pretty damn dark if you really sit with that. One must picture humanity happy. You've probably heard of the saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, seemingly that isn't the case with Mikey Frazier. He sells iguana bits outside the NCR in Fallout 2, being the son of Iguana Bob Frazier from Fallout 1, who secretly sold human meat. But what if we're wrong? What if Mikey is continuing his father's legacy? Because look at Mikey here, and then look at the White Glove Society. A tribe of cannibals in New Vegas who allegedly became civilized, but hold onto some dark desires. To be clear, this is just a fan theory that's appeared in certain icebergs, and it's a bit of a stretch to assume Mikey went the tribal route after Fallout 2. Plus, it was really Mr. House who initiated the tribes becoming civil. If Mikey did start the society, you'd think someone would mention it. So the theory kind of falls apart when you dissect it, but as a fun headcanon, it's innocent enough. Unlike the iguana bits. Negative skills can be achieved in the classic games. Normally, you can't go into the negatives, only being able to drop a skill to 1% or so, unless we take the gifted trait at character creation. Since gifted lowers skills by 10%, if a skill is already very low when you take it, the skills can turn negative. But this won't break the game or anything. You'll be very likely to fail at certain actions, but I actually found you can still succeed with a negative skill, which I found pretty interesting. Here my throwing skill was negative, but I still hit the ant. Also, I found that you can just level up and raise the skill like normal. It's a weird bug, but it's nothing too out there. The Followers of the Apocalypse good ending, much like the Intelligent Deathclaw good ending, is an impossible to get good ending for the Followers of the Apocalypse in Fallout 1. Essentially, there was going to be different endings for the Followers, one in which they are destroyed by the mutants, and one where they go on to survive. However, the quest to save the Followers by finding a spy in their base was never implemented, so you simply can't get a good ending for them unless you're playing a modded game. This is that ending.
The Followers of the Apocalypse rise to become a major influence in New California. With your help, they gain control of the LA Boneyard.
The last note I have on this is, unlike the Intelligent Deathclaw ending, where the bad one has been considered canon by many fans, the good ending with the Followers is officially canon. The Followers weren't destroyed and managed to survive into New Vegas. So maybe the Talking Deathclaws do have more hope of survival than we thought. Speaking of Talking Deathclaws though, yes, the hairy Deathclaws featured in Fallout Tactics are smart and can talk. To be clear, these guys are featured in the timeline before the Intelligent Deathclaws from Fallout 2, which is why I didn't really talk about them much in that entry. The hairy Deathclaws seem to be their own thing, and aren't actually reptiles like ordinary Deathclaws are, being mammals instead. It's also not even clear if they're canon, since again, Tactics is only partially canon. Why Bethesda hasn't clarified what is and isn't canon just to make things simpler on all of us is beyond me, but what can you do? Now, there's one more interpretation of this entry I'd like to talk about. According to the former Fallout developer Scott Campbell, his original concept for the Deathclaw was a hairy beast that was a mutated mix of Wolverine and Brown Bear. The problem was it had too much hair, which would have been really rough to render due to the software at the time. Fortunately, what was also being developed at Interplay at the time was Planescape Torment, which had a Tarrasque model made for it but never used. So the Fallout devs called dibs on it, and that's the Deathclaw we got. Funnily enough, things did come full circle with the Hairy Deathclaw and tactics. While not a perfect one-for-one with the concept sketch, Fallout lead designer Chris Taylor did say the original concept inspired the Hairy Deathclaw we finally got. In my Classic Iceberg series, I mentioned how Fallout was originally being developed as a GURPS game, a video game adaptation of the GURPS, or Generic Universal Role-Playing System, by Steve Jackson Games. What I didn't mention is just how different Fallout used to be. If you thought the trailer looked different at points, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Adapted from the revised 3rd edition of the GURPS basic set, the original Fallout system didn't have special. It had strength, dexterity, intelligence, and health. If you think that's a downgrade, well, hold on a second. Wait until you see the amount of skills. Fallout 1 had 18. Fallout GURPS had 56. For example, instead of just a single speech skill, you had a variety of skills like diplomacy for persuasion, bard for public speaking, acting for lying over a long amount of time, fast talk for lying over a short amount of time, intimidation for threats, savoir-faire for speaking the high society, sex appeal for seducing folk, and maybe even administration for talking to bureaucrats. There was a jumping skill, a holdout skill for hiding items, a forgery skill, and a climbing skill. Stuff that flat out isn't present in the final game. There's other skills you can tell got merged together, like those speech skills or all the different unique weapon skills. Heck, look at this, there's a throwing skill and then a separate spear throwing skill. For better or worse, this original system was going all out with your options. Something else to note is the system doesn't technically have perks or traits, at least how we know them now. See, GURPS uses a point-buy system with a number of advantages and disadvantages you can buy with character points during character creation. Advantages help your character and cost points, whereas disadvantages hurt your character but reward points that buy more advantages. I really dig it, along with other systems like it, such as the one in Project Zomboid. So instead of taking traits with built-in good and bad qualities, you had the positives and negatives laid out, and you had to make your own choices. Do you stick with the advantages you can afford, or do you get some extra ones by taking on some disadvantages? Do you take on a bunch of small flaws so you can afford that nice advantage you want, or do you take one big disadvantage you can stomach? There's a lot more flexibility and decision making here, which I honestly prefer over the trait system. Yeah, I do wish traits would make a comeback in the new Fallouts. It was heresy to remove them. But if they'd been replaced with this system, I wouldn't complain. Just look at some of these cut disadvantages, like compulsive lying, where you must roll against intelligence with a penalty, or else you have to lie. Or bad temper, where you have to make a successful will roll in stressful situations, or else insult or attack other characters. You would have even been able to get fat, giving you negative reactions from a bunch of hungry wastelanders. I really think it would have made one of the best RPGs, an even better one, having these sorts of options. Presumably, you'd be able to buy advantages during the game like you can take perks throughout Fallout. After all, you can get more character points in GURPS campaigns. But see, GURPS is a levelless system. It's up to the DM to reward character points how they please. So it's not really clear how this would have worked in Fallout. There'd likely be no levels, and instead of getting experience points that lead to a level up, you just get character points for hitting certain milestones like accomplishing major quests, killing a certain number of creatures, stuff like that. Then there's even more stuff to consider, like how you'd be able to dual wield weapons, how that was reflected in the UI splitting up, and how there was the ambidexterity advantage, because dual wielding weapons normally gives players a dexterity penalty to their offhand weapon. Who knows, maybe you would have been able to equip an item in one hand and a weapon in another. Then, if you use a two-handed weapon, you can't use anything else. Both your hands are taken up. That makes sense. I wish that was in the final release. Maybe they figured that making unique sprites for weapons in either hand would be a nightmare. There's this cool bit of the UI where there's a triangle menu for interactions, for inspecting, looting, or talking. That looks neat. On the flip side, the skill decks went from this to... Ooh, man, that kind of looks painful. In fact, it probably outright was. Combat would have also had way more options. From more targeted shot locations like neck and feet, a full-on 14 places to aim instead of 8 like in the final game, to more actions and decisions to make. I'm not going to give a full breakdown on GURPS combat, there's entire spreadsheets for that. But trust me when I say, GURPS is a really intricate system, so you can bet Fallout was trying to be as well. Morpheus is a village elder, some official press pack pictures had mutants like centaurs and ghouls standing near each other, plus humans, which makes me wonder if this was honestly intended to be in the final release or just for the press to see. I personally lean towards the latter. And that's really everything that stood out to me. With regards to stuff like the 56 skills and dual wielding weapons or items, I do wonder how much the devs could have truly pulled off. Would it really have been a system where every skill matters, when not even every one of the 18 skills gets a whole lot of use in the final release? 56 might have been too much, and while I still really would have liked to see dual wielding different weapons and items, would it have been a pain making sprites for every possible variety of one-handed weapons being equipped? Scott Campbell did say GURPS stuff was getting streamlined, and some of the more ambitious ideas in general, like seduction of every NPC, were getting cut. So who knows if what we see here would have even made it in the final game. There are things like advantages and disadvantages though, or some of the UI features I do really wish were in the final release. I definitely get that the dev team were trying to avoid a cease and desist letter in reworking their systems. And it's a tough situation all around because the GURPS system didn't work out. Fallout didn't end up being a GURPS game. But what happened exactly? Honestly, the most likely answer is creative differences and lack of communication. But there's never truly been a definitive answer. A lot of decision making was being made between elusive Interplay executives and the elusive Steve Jackson. And it seems that Interplay pulled the plug after Steve had some notes on the gameplay he saw, allegedly not liking the intro cutscene with the unarmed Canadian rebel being executed, and Vault Boy of all things. A lot of people blame Steve for how things went down. Some blame Interplay for how they handled communication, suggesting Interplay didn't even reach out to tell Jackson they were dropping the IP, that he had to learn about it later. Interestingly enough, there was an article by Jimmy Meyer, writer on the Digital Antiquarian, which suggests that while Jackson could be temperamental, there's also a decent chance this wasn't earnest anger on his part, as earnest as it may seem. There's a good chance he was bluffing with these creative demands, and simply scared Interplay off from wanting to deal with him. Tabletop designer and writer Samuel John Ross, who collaborated with Jackson in the 90s, was interviewed about the situation, saying, quote, "There's a lot of reasons to suppose that Steve was just trying to cover for dropping the ball on giving the game an honest try, by overstating his reaction to the first 5 minutes he actually spent with it, thus buying himself time to soften his view on that, and actually get a view on the game past the intro. A gambit that didn't pay off." The idea that Steve Jackson was bluffing after not giving the game an honest try is also something I found on the RPG Net forums, coming from an anonymous user claiming to have known a Steve Jackson staffer that was around for the Fallout about Fallout. As the legend goes, Steve was sent an approval copy or demo of the game with a certain amount of time to make comments and approve of what was in it, but got busy or just put it off. It was only at the very last second where he decides to look it over, playing it for a few minutes and whipping up a quick list of complaints. Whether they're genuine or to extend the deadline or even both is up for debate. But when Interplay gets the comments and sees Steve is rambling about stuff that's literally just in the first 5 minutes, they decide to go at it alone. Even the poster says to take it with a grain of salt, but in the same thread, Fallout programmer and designer Jesse Heinig actually chimed in, saying the fallout was caused by 6 months worth of lack of communication. So who was more responsible for that? Interplay or Steve? It's easy to blame Steve for sure, but apparently he flew all the way to Interplay's California offices to meet with Brian Fargo and talk about his concerns, only for the dude not to meet him at all. So he just plopped down in front of Tim Kaine and complained for several hours, ranting about Fault Boy. I'm gonna be honest here, it's a situation that sounds like a complete mess, where both sides, excluding the development team, may have made some serious screw-ups. I want to feel sympathetic towards Interplay not wanting to deal with the dude who may have skirted around engaging with their work and was making weird rants about it. But I also feel it's kind of messed up to disrespect a creator like Brian did, yet also want to work with them afterward. If that's true, I'm kind of confused here. On the other hand, I want to be way more sympathetic towards Steve Jackson, being a bit of a GURPS fan myself and understanding he's a creator. This is his baby that he's defending. But I struggle with finding him very likable in all this as well. I want to make it clear, I respect a guy who's trying to make sure his IP isn't trampled or misused.
There has to be a part of you that is ruthless and merciless when it comes to protecting the art. I think that's true with every art form.
And I can sort of even see where Jackson's coming from with the intro critique or the disdain for the violence. I personally like it, and I think it helps make Fallout 1 the revolutionary, boundary-pushing RPG it is, getting you sucked into this bleak, depressing world. But there's other perspectives to consider, especially in IP owners who's a creative and has their own vision of what their work is, what it means to them. GURPS is an in-depth tabletop RPG that's generic enough for any setting or game you want. Fallout almost immediately starts showing cold-blooded murder as a pitch-black joke, and this is the least of it. This is a huge exaggeration on my end, but imagine you made D&D, and the first folk you licensed it to for video game adaptation, the first D&D video game ever made, is Fear and Hunger. You might raise an eyebrow at the very least, hopefully nothing more than that. But really, that's where my sympathies end, because I get really weirded out by some of this other behavior or criticism like about Vault Boy. Not him being used in violent ways, no. Just Vault Boy in general. The skinnier version of him, but we'll get to that later. He's just a silly little guy based off the Monopoly Man. I don't really know what else to say to that. Maybe Jackson didn't want a definitive mascot or face based on a universal system. Maybe he's got childhood trauma of Monopoly or something. It happens. Also, if it is true Jackson couldn't even play the demo past a couple of minutes right before deadline, that's kind of messed up. I mean, he didn't really care about the project or the appreciation the dev team had for his work. Hearing about everything that happened, he kind of strikes me as someone who shot himself in the foot. It's really disappointing that a lack of care and communication may have killed what could have been one of the best video game RPG adaptations of all time. And it's especially sad when you consider that Tim Kaine was a huge GURPS head, a big fan whose team was made up of genuine GURPS players running campaigns in the office, and then the IP just fell through. The game as a whole didn't get cancelled, and it's one of the best RPGs ever made. But it's hard not to get a little sad thinking what could have been. R.I.P. According to info Chris Taylor gave Powell Dembowski, founder of the Vault Wiki, there was a Fallout game being made for the PlayStation 1. It would have been a top-down shooter, and it was only in development for 3 to 4 months before being canned. I'd imagine it would have been somewhat similar to Brotherhood of Steel, which did eventually release for the PlayStation 2. Now, I did hear in my comments that I missed out on covering a Fallout 1 PS1 port that didn't happen. But the thing is, I'm not fully sure if I did miss out. I don't doubt that Interplay may have wanted to port Fallout 1 to consoles, but I can't really find anything substantial about it either. There's a Reddit post claiming to have the ultra rare PS1 copy from 1998, which Tim Kaine himself posted on. He didn't debunk it, but others didn't really seem convinced. And it all just seems like a hoax, to be honest. The original post and images are deleted, with people calling it a hoax. So yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible. Maybe it was an idea Interplay had at some point, but clearly it never panned out. The ending of Fallout 1, where you're exiled by your vault after saving it, is one of the best game endings ever. I'm making that statement. It's one of the best. In any other game, with any other execution, it could have easily been seen as an FU. But as it stands, it's not annoying. It's this tragic, haunting conclusion to a hero's journey, where everything they did was done to protect their home, and now they can't return to it. It's dark, it's moving, shocking, upsetting, and like something straight out of a Western. Legitimately speaking, it's perfect. Also, if you have the Bloody Mess trait or Bad Karma, you blast the Overseer apart. Again, perfect. Originally though, that wasn't the ending Tim Kaine had in mind when making Fallout. He's on record saying he has nothing to do with the ending in the final game, saying how originally he wanted a happy party ending where the Vault celebrated your return with a cake and balloons. Leonard Boyarsky was the one who had the downer exile ending idea, and Tim had to be convinced to put it in. Except he wasn't sure if players would buy into it. Would it be too much of a twist and seem like a betrayal by the devs, not just the Overseer? But ultimately, despite any doubts, the exile ending is what they went with, and the rest is history. I'm very glad they went this route, since I can't really see Fallout 1 having any other ending. Even Fallout 2, which has its own happy ending for Arroyo, just can't really hold a cake to the OG. It sticks with me way more, and that's why I'm glad they didn't go with the party ending. Tucked in the game files for Fallout 2 is an unused hunger system with an entire calculation for stomach size and a hunger counter affected by the fast metabolism trait. You'd have to buy meals to keep yourself well fed, with different sizes of meals affecting how much hunger you'd reduce. It's a basic hunger system, but it's interesting to hear it was considered for Fallout 2. It almost seems like an extension of the random events in Fallout 1, where you take damage for not being able to find water in the desert, but here it's having an actual gameplay system around your needs. Personally, I'm kind of thankful it didn't make the final release. Hunger systems are very easy to mess up, and I also think the decision to make hunger something optional like it was in New Vegas and 4 was the right call. In Fallout 1, beneath the barter button in dialogue mode is a button called Tell Me About, which leads to a text parser system where you can type in words and characters might react to them. The text parser was also used in Wasteland, which was an influence on Fallout. But Fallout definitely leaned more on its dialogue tree system, with the Tell Me About being more of a little cool bonus. There wasn't a ton to it, admittedly, and in Fallout 2, the button was flat out removed. Originally, there were plans to include Tell Me Abouts in Fallout 2, with characters in Arroyo having Tell Me Abouts still featured in the game files. For example, asking Hakunen about the Elder would lead him to saying, "The Elder is your mother and our leader." In the final game, that simple fact can be easy to miss, but here, it's clarified right away. With Fallout 2's short development time of less than a year, I can kinda get why they scrapped the system and chose to concentrate on what's always really been the main dialogue system in this whole series, the dialogue trees. It never was extremely useful and was more or less fluff, and I don't see it returning in any future titles. Epic was a 3D post-apocalyptic RPG being developed by Troika Games, which was co-founded by Tim Kaine, Leonard Boyarsky, and Jason Anderson. It's been reported here and there as a cancelled Fallout sequel, but I'll link a video below of Tim talking about the project where it's confirmed to have been its own thing. In Tim's own words, it was made without the constraints of the Fallout IP. The game was set in a whole new world, which had a ring, multiple moons, crazy weather and monsters, and even magic. It was a post-apocalyptic land, but whose destruction was a mystery to the player. Something you could find evidence of in the centuries-old ruins and items you'd find throughout the game. You started with 8 stats, and made a decision to choose a background and one of 4 factions which would determine your starting skill category, either social, combat, thieving, or magic. The 4 factions were barbarians in the north from a cold wasteland, an empire to the east controlling magic and the ruins of cities, the wardens of rust to the west, living in a vast desert, and the bogmen of the south, who lived in a swamp. Each faction was vying for control over the central region of the land, and the main quest would have been about helping one faction take control of it. There also would have been other small factions you could join who came from the old world, which sounds interesting. Even though it's a mystery and there's little details about the lore, if I had to take a guess, I'd say the world was probably a terraformed planet abandoned for some reason. One of Tim Kane's later projects, The Outer Worlds, which he's described as a pre-apocalyptic setting, features ideas of space colonization and terraforming as well, with the societies on those planets facing a lot of issues, like I'm sure the survivors in Epic would as well. Epic was proposed in 2004 and 2005 to publishers, but there weren't any takers, and Troika sadly closed down in February 2005. It's pretty sad because I do think it had some promise, and ultimately, it leads us to another sad fact. Troika actually made a bid for the Fallout IP when Interplay was selling it, but got outbid by Bethesda. It really sucks because if Troika was able to buy Fallout, Tim Kane could have bought back the IP he created and regained ownership of his work, but it didn't come to pass. It really sucks because if Troika was able to buy Fallout, Tim Kane could have bought back the IP he created and regained ownership of his work, but it didn't come to pass. I wish Tim had the rights to his own creation and got to make either a Fallout sequel or decide where the franchise went. Maybe licensing it out to different companies or storytellers who give their own spins on the franchise. It's a pretty painful what if to me. And if I'm not wrong, I missed talking about it in my main Iceberg series. I just think in the hands of Tim and company, it genuinely could have been so much different. I did have that entry where Bethesda saved Fallout, but now I don't know, man. Bethesda just hoards the IP now to themselves and doesn't want anyone else to have it, and yet they don't do much with Fallout outside of making terrible updates that worsen their games, or updating their MMO, or okaying the Fallout show. Oof. Now I'm just thinking, there's absolutely no reason for there not to be another New Vegas-like spin-off game. But they seem reluctant to hand the IP to anyone else unless you're the Fallout show, in which case, you can do whatever you want. What are they protecting exactly? Sorry for the nerd rage, but this is a tough entry. Troika almost bought Fallout, and I wish they did. Following the loss of the GURP system, the Fallout team had a short window to make a new system from scratch. What they came up with instead of the 4-stat GURP system was a 7-stat system with agility, charisma, endurance, intelligence, perception, and strength. Tim added luck, then realized it spelt out A-slips, and became convinced that should be the name of the system. He was very proud of it. Until Jason G. Swin pointed out that A-slips could be rearranged into special, and that was kind of that. It was the superior name everybody wanted instead, and it's what we ended up getting. But alas, imagine what could have been. A-slips. We've talked a bit about the early drafts of Fallout, how it was once a time-traveling RPG. But kind of like the Fallout GURPS entry from earlier, I felt I had to do a closer look on this one, because it is pretty wild. Before Fallout's retro-futuristic setting was decided, the team wanted to make a fantasy game and came up with this.
You started in the modern world, you were thrown back in time, you killed the monkey that would evolve into being humans, you went through space travel, you went to the future that was ruled by dinosaurs. You were then exiled to a fantasy planet where magic took you back to the original timeline that you restored to full and came back to the modern world to save your girlfriend. It's weird even hearing me talk about it now, but we really were going to go with this. And I think one of the other producers kind of slapped me and said, there's no way you're going to get the storyline made. It's not going to get approved. You could work on it for years and no one will ever do it. I sometimes wonder what it would be like if we had done this game. and I believe Scott Campbell, the designer at the time, may still have it written down somewhere. I'd love to see it, to see what we thought was cool, 18 years ago.
Fortunately, Scott Campbell did have the setting and ideas written down, sharing it all in a 25-page document sent to the No Mutants Allowed forum called The Origins of Fallout. The following is lifted straight from Scott. Here's the first draft of a script that came from a night of many beers. You create your character, an average Joe in a modern setting. As the game begins, you're meeting with your significant other in a sunny park. After a little talking, everything seems to be going great for your date tonight. As soon as you say goodbye, a group of black-robed cultists jumps out and grab your girl/boyfriend. Chasing them, you see them drag him/her to a dark and spooky mansion on the edge of town. If you call the police, an officer will show up, but he's grabbed the moment he knocks on the door. It's up to you. Finding a way inside the house, there's mysterious chanting and ritualistic goings-on. In your search, you find many tombs referring to a Cthulhu-esque monster that the cult is trying to bring to this world with blood sacrifices. At this point, we're firmly in a horror genre. As your search continues, you reach the dark tunnels beneath the mansion and come across a massive crystalline pillar. As you look into the pillar, you see the shadowy form of a human, just inside the cloudy crystal. Interesting. Eventually, you come to a huge underground cave where a statue of the Lovecraftian god looms over the proceedings. On the other side of a smoky pit, the high priests are preparing your significant other for sacrifice. Unfortunately, the priests are simply too tough for you to fight, and you will soon be overwhelmed by the cultists and brought to the edge of the pit. As the high priest raises his knife over your girl/boyfriend, he gives the order, and you are pushed into the black depths of the pit. Waking up, you find yourself on a huge pile of debris. Everything from trash bags, to fast food containers, to rotting skeletons. It seems the cultists, who are nowhere to be found, are using this weird pit as a waste dump. On closer inspection, you find the body of a police officer amongst the detritus, with his service revolver intact. Gun in hand, you make your way through the caves and out into bright sunlight. You are startled by what you see. No city, dense jungle, an erupting volcano, and pterodactyls flying in the skies. Somehow that pit dropped you millions of years into the past. Now, lost in a dangerous dinosaur-filled world, you must find a way back. At this point, the game changes to a prehistoric survival genre. Exploring the jungle primeval, your brawn, endurance, and stealth are tested as you fight raptors, run from charging triceratops, and evade T-Rexes. In your journey, you find strange, anachronistic devices scattered about that seem to have fallen like meteors. Some are sorta like flashlights, while others are explosives or portable force fields. As you reach the top of a hill, you see a glint of metal at the end of a nearby canyon. Making your way towards it, you quickly realize that the canyon is actually a massive trench dredged by the hull of a crashing spaceship. The ship appears mostly intact, but a storage bay seems to have been ripped open. However, a sealed door with a strange red symbol on it bars your way deeper into the ship. Just outside of the wreckage, a nasty lemur-like monkey chitters and hisses at you from a rock. You notice that it is holding a metallic card with a strange red symbol on it. Trying to coax the monkey towards you, it laughs, points, and throws poo at you. This vicious cur scampers from rock to rock, just out of reach and taunting you maliciously. After being thoroughly humiliated by the critter, you eventually shoot it, trap it, or throw a rock at it, smashing its little skull but gaining the key card. Good riddance. Using the card to enter the ship, you now enter a science fiction genre. You find malfunctioning robots, laser guns, and nasty lurking alien creatures. You find a universal translator in a room that helps you understand the computer systems in the ship. Eventually making your way to the command bridge, you find that the little gray aliens who crashed here were all eaten by the dangerous aliens they were transporting. The ship's mission was to collect species from across time and space, and you suddenly realize that the ship is a time machine. After activating the computers and repairing the drive core, you are ready to begin takeoff. You punch in your future destination date and set the time reactors to go. The fragile ship lists into the sky, and suddenly rockets into hyperspace. In a blink, you find yourself soaring towards skyscrapers. Trying your best, you clip a few of the buildings as you crash into the ground with a crunch. You make your way out of the spaceship and find yourself in the heart of a massive metropolis. As you look about confused, a human-sized dinosaur moves up to you. As you see it, its eyes go wide and it runs from you, screaming, "The aliens have arrived." Somehow you've reached a future where anthropomorphic dinosaurs rule the earth. You now find yourself in a dystopian cyberpunk genre where velociraptor punks hack the net with cybernetic implants and brontosaurus bouncers flex their augmented muscle implants. Weird? Yes, but kinda cool. As you flee from the gun-toting Dinotech corporate soldiers who were told to only bring back alien bodies, you make your way into the underground of the city. There, you find the destitute dino-punks who fight against the evil corporations controlling the people. Your universal translator lets you communicate with them, and they think that the alien technology you bring will finally be the thing they need to win the war. They give you a holographic emitter to hide your alienness. Still trying to find out where you are, you find a data library and research the history of the planet. As it turns out, humans never evolved. Suddenly, the terrible truth dawns on you. That nasty little monkey with the keycard was the ancestor of all mankind. Dope! With your ship mostly destroyed and now captured by Dinotech Inc., you're really in a jam. Somehow, you convince your Dinopunk allies to help you get into the corporation and get your ship back. Before the mission, a Stegosaurus mad scientist working for the Resistance has a solution to the corporate thugs' electrostun weapons. He calls it superconducting underwear and has made a prototype pair just for you. As you and your Dino allies break into the corporation, you find that the engineers at Dinotech have already disassembled your ship and are testing the various components. You find from hacking a computer that they are testing the temporal stability modulator in a secret lab. Fighting your way to the lab, you arrive just in time to see the experiment underway. The Time Core has created a swirling time portal that looks just like that dark well, and the Dinotechs are about to send a test capsule through it. Securing the room with your Dino allies, you punch in the coordinates to take you back to the past and jump into the capsule as it begins to move into the time portal. Just as you are entering, a group of corporate security burst into the room and begin shooting at the Time Core. Just as the core explodes, you slip into the closing time portal and are sent spiraling through an unstable wormhole. You see yourself flying across space and time, eventually racing towards a planet and sizzling through its atmosphere. Before you can do anything, you crash like a meteor straight into the spires of a black stone castle and come to a landing nearby. Crawling out of the capsule and from beneath the stone rubble, you see a human dressed in an elaborate evil wizard getup approaching you. As you speak, he cuts you off with a wave of his hand and begins monologuing. He proclaims that he is the Dark Lord of this land, blah blah, Master of Lightning, blah blah. And how dare you attack his castle, blah blah, and he will now destroy you. Like some kind of disco dancer, the wizard waves his hands through the air, collecting a charge of electricity, and sends the crackling bolt at you. And nothing happens. Your superconducting underwear dissipated the bolt. Alarmed, the wizard blasts at you again and again, but to no avail. After a while, you grow bored and lay him out with one punch. Since you just single-handedly defeated the Dark Lord of the land, you are immediately heralded as a hero. With his evil minions fleeing for the hills, the people can turn to their regular pastime, enslaving the fairy people. You now find yourself in a darkly humorous fantasy world, where fairy tales are turned on their head, now entering the sword and sorcery genre. The sorceress in the nearby village notices something different about you. She can tell you're from another time and place and vows to help you, right after you do a few little quests for her. As it turns out, gold is worthless. Quests are the real currency of the land. So, after several quests, rescuing a dragon from a princess, protecting a dungeon full of peace-loving orcs from rampaging heroes, and delivering flowers to the underworld, the sorceress finally helps you. She hands you 3 potions. She says to drink the red one, give the blue one to the monkey, then drink the green one. Drinking the red potion, you find yourself flung into space, hurling towards Earth, and landing in prehistoric times right outside the crashed spaceship. Unable to move, you look on as you see yourself trying to coax the pass card from the monkey. You watch as you get frustrated enough to commit lemurcide and take the pass card. As the spaceship takes off, you regain movement and approach the dying monkey. Giving him a sip of the blue potion, it quickly jumps to its feet, throws poo on you, and scampers off. Lovely. Finally, you drink the green potion. You see green crystalline growth spread out from your body and quickly encase you in a pillar of jagged crystal. You watch as the sun spins above you as the ages dart past. You see yourself buried in a volcanic blast, and then millennia later, watch as the human miners unearth you and drag you to their underground complex. You look on motionless as your younger self approaches your crystalline pillar in the dark basement, trying to make out your shadowy form. As your younger self leaves the basement, the crystal begins to crack, quickly breaking apart and releasing you into the basement. You follow after yourself, making quick work of the cultists who were about to jump your earlier inexperienced self. You arrive in the underground cave right as your earlier self is hurled into the pit. As the high priest raises his dagger over your significant other, you burst into the ceremony. The cultists who had overwhelmed you before are no match to the skills and strange equipment you've gained on your adventures. After knocking out the high priest and his minions, you rescue your girl/boyfriend with style, reminding them with a kiss of your date tonight. The end. And that's the whole draft. There are some slight differences here and there in how some people have remembered it over the years. For example, Tim said that the main character was a detective, but Scott's draft seems to be the most comprehensive vision we have of that original time-traveling idea. Honestly, it's a little out there, but I think it had potential to be a pretty cool game, even from the first draft. It's silly, but charming. And I'll say it, it makes a lot of sense as the first GURPS game, maybe more than Fallout did. I mean, how do you make the first GURPS game ever when it's a system meant for any setting? Why not show the flexibility off like the devs wanted to and have a whole bunch of varied settings showcased? Fantasy, future, horror, monk. Scope-wise, you're shooting an arrow in your knee, but I do respect that weird, crazy ambition. Knowing the time it was made and the isometric art style it was shooting for, all those different realms would have needed a bunch of different art assets and talent to make cohesive. It would have definitely been a challenge to get right, but I can't lie here, I would have liked a wacky time-traveling RPG with Lovecraftian horrors and Dino cyberpunk land. Something I did notice was how Dinotech sounds a lot like Vault-Tec. So I got to wondering, was this the original idea behind it? Was the evil Volt Corporation originally just a bunch of dinosaur people? I will say the game does sound more like a linear adventure game at times than an actual role-playing one. Granted, there are those instances of multiple solutions to a quest, like dealing with the monkey. Also, maybe there'd be the possibility that you could have done quests in any order, such as the quests in the fantasy realm. But I doubt we would have gotten the same sort of open-ended experience that was in Fallout. Perhaps a number of quest hubs if we were lucky. It is really hard to judge though because this is the first draft and really sounds like an outline of the main quest. There could have easily been plans to build on from this and fill out the areas with side quests or content that catered to different types of characters. We just won't get to know because the idea went the way of the dinosaurs. Higher ups said it was way too ambitious and suggested scoping things down settings-wise, which got us Fallout. The last note I have is I'm surprised not a lot of games do this genre-bending stuff more often. I could see it being for the same reasons it was shot down in the 90s, where it'd be a pain to scope or make a whole bunch of varied quality assets for. But I don't know, in the hands of an indie dev, it could be worth a shot. We get games here and there that are secretly post-apocalyptic or secretly set in the future, but you don't seem to get those weird, all-out hybrids like this idea or Ultima where there's magic and then laser guns and time machines. It could be cool. While we didn't get this game, we still got something great. And we got Vault-Tec out of Dinotech. That's awesome, right? Speaking of... in the new games, Vault-Tec is spelled like this. That's also the case in much of Fallout 1 and 2. It's in the Fallout 1 manual, the intro cutscene of Fallout 2, the Ron Perlman narration bit, but wait, what's this? Yeah, in Fallout 1 and 2, Vault-Tec has this alternative spelling at points. Vault-Tec. It's kinda weird, right? What exactly is with that inconsistency? I couldn't find a proper reason why, and I've seen some people chalk it up to Vault-Tec having interchangeable spellings for its name. Keep in mind, the following is just my own headcanon on this, but I figure Vault-Tec rebranded at some point during development of the vaults, So some equipment has the old logo, whereas some vaults have the new one. Realistically, it would have taken some time to make these things. Just making a single vault, Vault 13, took almost 6 years and cost billions. So why waste any more time or money updating the logos during development? While this is a big stretch on my part, the logo difference might also speak to some subtle quality issues we've come to expect from the vaults. The fact there's just different logos slapped here and there makes the vault seem imperfect and almost haphazard. Almost like they didn't have the most care put towards them and making them perfect for the vault dwellers, because ultimately, yeah, there was no care towards the vault dwellers. That, or maybe the devs and artists just weren't on the same page here. I've talked about it in my Classic Fallout Iceberg video, where it seems the cinematics sometimes differ from what the game shows. Like how Vault 13 is deep in a cave, but teleports to the cave entrance in Fallout 2's intro. Avalon even had his own questions about that intro. So yeah, could be a misinterpretation, could just be something that the devs didn't care all that much to fix. Who knows? It hasn't appeared in any of the new games or media, and it's just a small weird part about the classic games. Fallout 1 normally begins with you standing outside the vault door for the first time, in the rat caves next to poor Dead Ed. But according to Scott Campbell, there were originally plans for a slightly longer, more interactive intro where you'd start the game not outside the vault, but inside of it. You'd be having a normal day, starting in your room when a computer voice tells you to get dressed and go to work. Cool little detail is that your job would differ depending on what skills you have, and the jobs listed include security guard, scientist, maintenance worker, and vault PR. On your way to work, you can talk to anybody you want and get a picture that while people are nice and vault life is good, something strange is happening. People seem like they're in a funk. They mention the water tasting funny. Some even outright mention there being a water problem, but they seem scared to say it in public. Soon enough, you'd be called to the Overseer's office, where he'd explain the water chip situation to you. Although there is a slight difference here. He brings up how the Vault's central computer has chosen you as the most likely to succeed in getting a new water chip. Combined with that other mention of a computer voice telling you to go to work, things seem a lot more technical here in this early draft compared to the final game, where there aren't really any automated helpers that we can see. After getting the Overseer speech, you'd gather supplies by begging, borrowing, or stealing, talking to fellow dwellers who either want to know more about the outside world, or who think of it as a death sentence. From there, you go to the vault door and you know the rest. Beyond the extended intro, Scott says there were other plans for Vault 13, making it a base of operations you were fully expected to return to, with different events happening to it over time, including your family's kidnapping by super mutants. With the exception of the water thief quest, all of this was cut due to time, which is a shame because it does sound pretty cool. Scott says this longer intro was important to establishing what was at stake for the Vault, and also how dreadful the outside truly was. And yeah, I think it may have helped connect us to Vault 13 more and made going outside more intimidating than it ended up being. As long as it wasn't like 30 minutes long, I think I would have liked that intro. But what do you guys think? Would you have preferred a somewhat longer intro, or do you like how it is in the final game? Let me know in the comments. In an interview with IGN, Fallout's lead designer Chris Taylor said there was a manhole cover that gave characters who critically failed a strength check to lift it a small bit of damage. It was a funny idea, but then Brian Fargo ended up dying to it. His character was already injured, critically failed, and took enough hernia damage to kick the bucket. I just find it funny because Chris talks about funny bugs during development, including dog sprites accidentally being used instead of rocket shells due to an object ID number mess up. But it's the hernia where stuff got real. It wasn't as amusing. Evidently, it was bad enough that hernia damage is not in the final release, or even in the demo that came out. Like a lot of other characters in Fallout 1, Vault Boy went through a number of different designs, having concept art drawn of him, including what's considered to be the very first sketch of him. Behold, the first Vault Boy, or Alt Boy as I like to call him. This is just my own headcanon, but I could picture with Vault's rationing supplies, people would get skinnier than they were on the surface. So here's Voltboy as subtle propaganda, to show how normal it is being thin. Just look at that smile. Another main reason Oldboy is here is he's basically become my channel mascot at this point. While I am a big Fallout fan, I have a lot of nerd rage opinions and ideas on where I want the franchise to go, the alternative it could be. Then here's this alternate version of Voltboy, and it was perfect. He's the channel icon, he'll even appear in some of my videos. I still mess with Voltboy in spite of everything, but I also dig Oldboy, maybe just not his diet. And I think that about does it for the Classic Fallout Iceberg series. If you liked what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe, since it does help me in my eternal fight against the YouTube algorithm. Also, feel free to let me know any feedback you have, or any video ideas you'd like to see covered on this channel in the future, because I really do try to make the channel something special. I actually just started doing YouTube full time, so anything helps from you guys. If you'd like to go the extra mile, there's links in the description below to donations for my channel, including to my Patreon. For just $1, you can become a champion of the wastes. Plus, for any Spotify listeners out there, I've got a ton of my best content posted there. A link is also included in the description. And if you are a Spotify listener, it'd mean a lot if you follow me and leave a nice review there. But more than anything, thank you guys for watching. Much more to come. In the meantime, I hope you stay safe out there.